I have a condition. Not life-threatening, not dramatic enough for sympathy cards or fundraisers, just chronic enough to make breathing around cigarette smoke feel like inhaling broken glass. The doctors called it reactive airway disease. I called it inconvenient. My daughter called it me being dramatic. She knew. God knows she knew. I'd told her a dozen times over the years, back when she still pretended to care about things like that. Back when she'd stub out a cigarette if I walked into the room, back when she'd crack a window without me having to ask. That was before Marcus, before the ring, before the Instagram wedding with the flower wall and the drone footage, before she started looking at me like I was a relic from a world she'd outgrown. They showed up on a Saturday afternoon in late September. Our place sits on the edge of a neighborhood that used to be working class before the property values climbed. Small yards, narrow driveways, houses built in the 70s that creak when the wind picks up. My wife Helen and I bought it 30 years ago when we were young and stupid and thought a mortgage was the worst thing that could happen to us. Marcus drove. He always drove. Some kind of SUV with chrome accents and tinted windows, the kind of vehicle that screams, "I have money, but no taste." They parked crooked across our driveway, blocking Helen's car. I noticed. I always notice. My daughter Brenna climbed out first, all long legs and designer sunglasses, her phone already in her hand. 28 years old and still dressed like she was trying to impress strangers at a beach club. Marcus followed, wearing athletic gear that probably cost more than my monthly electric bill. He had that fitness influencer look, the kind of manufactured muscle that comes from supplements and mirrors, not work. Helen was in the kitchen when they walked in. She glanced up from her coffee, gave them a measured smile, and went back to reading something on her tablet. That was Helen. Warm when she wanted to be, cold when you deserved it, and always 3 steps ahead of everyone else in the room. "Hey, Dad." Brenna kissed my cheek, the kind of perfunctory gesture you'd give a distant relative at a funeral. Marcus wanted to stop by before we head up to the retreat. "Retreat?" I asked. "The couples thing at Pinecrest Lodge. I told you about it last month." She hadn't. Or maybe she had and assumed I'd forgotten. People my age are allowed to forget things. It's convenient that way. Marcus gave me one of those chin-up nods that passes for greeting among men who've never learned to shake hands properly. "Good to see you, Frank." Likewise. They settled into the living room like they owned it. Marcus sprawled across the couch, legs wide, scrolling his phone. Brenna perched on the armrest, already talking about the lodge, about the spa treatments, about some couple from Connecticut they'd met at a seminar who'd recommended the place. I sat in my chair by the window. It's a good chair, worn leather that's molded to my shape over the years. From there I can see the street, the neighbor's oak tree, the place where the sidewalk cracked last winter and the city never fixed it. Helen joined us, settling on the love seat with her coffee. She had that look on her face, the one that says she's cataloging everything, filing away details for later use. "So this retreat," Helen said, her voice light and conversational. "That's the one you mentioned needing help with the deposit?" Brenna's smile tightened just slightly. "We got it covered, Mom." "With the business credit line Frank helped you set up?" "We're managing our finances just fine." "I'm sure you are, honey." There was a beat of silence. Marcus shifted on the couch. Then Brenna pulled out her cigarettes. I watched her shake one from the pack, watched her thumb the lighter. The flame caught. She inhaled. The smoke drifted toward me, that acrid sweetness that makes my throat close up. I felt it immediately, the familiar tightness in my chest. "Brenna," I said, keeping my voice level, "could you smoke outside? You know it bothers my breathing." She glanced at me, exhaled slowly. The smoke hung in the air between us. Marcus looked up from his phone, his expression shifted into something harder. "Seriously?" "My lungs are sensitive to smoke. I've mentioned it before." "It's barely anything," Brenna said. "You're being dramatic." I've learned over the years that staying calm is a skill. You don't raise your voice. You don't let emotion bleed into your words. You state facts and let them stand. I'm asking politely, please smoke outside. That's when Marcus sat forward. His jaw tightened. His eyes locked on mine with the kind of aggressive intensity that men use when they're used to getting their way through volume. You don't get to tell us anything. The words landed flat in the room. Helen's head came up from her tablet. Brenna froze mid-drag, then laughed. Actually laughed. This short, sharp sound that said she thought the whole situation was ridiculous. Dad gets dramatic over everything, she said to Marcus, like I wasn't sitting right there. Last month it was the music being too loud. Before that it was us parking wrong. Marcus grinned. Old people, man. They shared a look. One of those conspiratorial glances that people exchange when they think they're smarter than everyone else in the room. Brenna took another drag, deliberately blowing the smoke in my general direction. I didn't respond. I sat there, hands resting on the arms of my chair, and kept my expression neutral. Inside, though, something shifted. Some internal calibration adjusted itself. Because in that moment, I understood exactly what I was looking at. Not my daughter. Not anymore. This was someone who'd decided that respect was optional, that kindness was weakness, that the people who'd raised her were obstacles to be managed or mocked. Helen caught my eye. She didn't say anything. She didn't need to. 30 years of marriage teaches you to read each other without words. Her expression was calm, her posture relaxed, but I saw the calculation happening behind her eyes. They forgot something important about quiet people. We don't stay quiet because we're weak. We stay quiet because we're patient. Because we understand that reactions are ammunition, and ammunition shouldn't be wasted. Brenna stubbed out her cigarette in the coffee mug on the end table. My coffee mug, the one I'd been drinking from before they arrived. She dropped the butt in the dregs at the bottom and set it back down without a glance. We should get going, Marcus said, standing up. Traffic's going to be murder. They left the way they came, casual and unconcerned. Brenna called something about seeing us next week. The door closed. The SUV reversed out of the driveway, tires squealing slightly on the pavement. Helen looked at me. Well? That was instructive. It was. She sipped her coffee, eyes distant. You're going to do something, aren't you? I didn't answer right away. I sat there, listening to the house settle around us, to the tick of the kitchen clock, to the distant sound of someone mowing their lawn 3 houses down. Then I stood up and walked to my office. It's a small room off the hallway, just big enough for a desk and filing cabinets. I built the shelves myself years ago, back when I had the time and energy for that kind of project. Everything I need is in there. Documents, records, contacts. I pulled open the bottom drawer of the filing cabinet. The folders were organized alphabetically, each one labeled in my careful handwriting. I found the one marked property, Brenna, Marcus, and pulled it out. Inside were copies of everything: the co-signed mortgage paperwork for their condo, the vehicle transfer agreement for the car they claimed to have bought but that I technically still owned, the business credit line documents with my name guaranteeing repayment. I'd kept copies. Of course I'd kept copies. I keep copies of everything. My phone sat on the desk, screen dark. I picked it up, scrolled through my contacts until I found the one I was looking for. Dawson, do not call unless necessary. My finger hovered over the name. Gerald Dawson. Retired city planning supervisor, still connected, still owed me favors from the years I'd done contract work on municipal projects. The kind of man who understood how systems worked and where the pressure points were. I thought about Brenna's laugh, about Marcus's sneer, about the cigarette butt in my coffee mug. Then I thought about the fact that they'd illegally modified the load-bearing wall in their condo to create an open floor plan, about the posts they'd made online bragging about finding loopholes in HOA regulations, about the luxury retreat they were heading to on credit they couldn't actually afford. I pressed the call button. Dawson answered on the third ring. Frank, long time. I need a favor. Must be important if you're using this number. Routine building inspection, compliance verification, the kind that needs to happen Monday morning. There was a pause. Address? I gave it to him. And the reason? Let's call it concerned civic duty, ensuring residential modifications meet code. Another pause. Longer this time. Then Dawson chuckled. This going to cause someone problems? It's going to freeze someone's weekend plans, maybe more than that. You sure you want to do this? I looked at the folder on my desk, at the careful documentation of every financial entanglement I'd created, at the evidence of my own foolish generosity. No, I said. I don't want to freeze their weekend plans. I want to freeze their lifestyle. Consider it done. Inspections scheduled for Monday, 7 a.m. sharp. Should take most of the day. Any permit violations get flagged immediately. Thanks, Gerald. Frank, whatever they did to you must have been bad. I hung up without responding. Helen appeared in the doorway. She'd been listening. She always listened. One phone call, she said. One phone call. That's all it took? That's all it took. She leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. They have no idea, do they? None. Good. She smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. They forgot something important. What's that? We taught them everything they know. We just never taught them everything we know. I looked at the phone in my hand, then back at Helen. 30 years of marriage. 30 years of building a life together, of solving problems together, of being a team when it mattered. This is going to get ugly, I said. I certainly hope so. That night, I didn't sleep much. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to Helen's steady breathing beside me. My mind kept replaying the scene, the smoke, the laugh, the casual cruelty of people who'd forgotten where they came from. Around 3 a.m., Helen rolled over. Stop thinking so loud. Can't sleep. Because you feel guilty? Should I? She propped herself up on one elbow. In the darkness, I could just make out the shape of her face. You asked them politely. They mocked you. They disrespected you in your own home. Whatever happens now, they earned it. It feels like revenge? Yeah. Good. It should. Because that's exactly what it is. She lay back down. Go to sleep, Frank. Tomorrow's going to be interesting. I closed my eyes, but sleep didn't come easily, because Helen was right. This was revenge. Calculated, methodical, and completely justified. And somewhere in the dark hours of that Saturday night, I stopped feeling guilty about it. By Sunday afternoon, they'd be at the lodge. By Monday morning, they'd be getting a phone call they weren't expecting. And by the time they understood what was happening, it would be too late to stop it. They thought silence meant weakness. They thought patience meant surrender. They were about to learn differently. As the story unfolds, hit the hype button, like, subscribe, and write in the comments. Would you forgive them or walk away? Sunday morning arrived with gray skies and the smell of rain. Helen made breakfast while I sat at the kitchen table, going through the property documents again. Every page told a story. Every signature was a promise they'd never intended to keep. The condo had been my idea. Brenna and Marcus were living in some overpriced apartment complex, throwing money at rent, complaining about never being able to save. I'd suggested they look into buying. They'd looked at me like I'd suggested they fly to the moon. We can't afford a down payment, Brenna had said. So I'd co-signed. Not because I was stupid, but because I thought it would teach them something about responsibility, about investment, about building equity. I thought it would give them a foundation. What they'd learned instead was that other people's money spends just as easily as their own. The renovation had come next. They wanted an open floor plan. The condo had a wall separating the kitchen from the living area. Marcus had found some contractor willing to do the work cheap under the table. No permits, no inspection, just a weekend with power tools and a willingness to ignore structural concerns. They'd posted about it on social media. Photos of the demolition, captions about beating the system, and DIY wins. I'd seen the posts, I'd saved screenshots, because even then, some part of me knew this information might be useful someday. Helen set a plate in front of me, eggs, toast, the way I liked it. She sat down with her own breakfast and her tablet. They should be checking into the lodge around now, she said. I glanced at the clock. 10:15. Probably. You think they suspect anything? Not a chance. Why would they? I'm just Dad, just the guy they ignore until they need something. She bit into her toast, chewing thoughtfully. Gerald Dawson's thorough. If there are violations, he'll find them. There are violations. How bad? Bad enough to fail inspection. Bad enough to require immediate remediation. Bad enough that any pending financial transactions tied to the property get frozen pending resolution. Helen's eyebrows went up. The retreat. They put it on the business credit line, the one attached to the property as collateral. So when the property gets flagged, the credit line freezes, authorization pending, and that luxury couple's retreat they're so excited about, the one they already made the deposit on but haven't paid the full balance for, that final payment bounces. She smiled, actually smiled. Frank Martinez, you devious man. I learned from the best. Flattery will get you everywhere. She sipped her coffee. What else do they have tied to that property? I pulled out another folder. This one was thinner, but more important. Car registration. The vehicle's technically titled in my name. Transfer agreement was contingent on them maintaining good standing on the property loan. And if the property fails inspection, the transfer agreement becomes voidable, at my discretion. Can you actually do that? I had our lawyer draw up the paperwork when we did the deal. Brenna signed it. Didn't read it, but signed it. It's legal. Helen set down her cup. For a long moment, she just looked at me. Then she reached across the table and squeezed my hand. I'm proud of you. For being vindictive? For not being a doormat. There's a difference. We finished breakfast in comfortable silence. Outside, the rain started. Light at first, then heavier, drumming against the windows. The kind of rain that makes you grateful to be inside, that makes the world feel smaller and safer. My phone buzzed around 11. Text message, unknown number, inspection scheduled for tomorrow 7 a.m. Property owner has been notified per standard procedure. Expect compliance issues. I showed Helen. She read it, nodded. They know. They know. You think they'll call? Brenna will. Give it an hour. I was wrong. It took 45 minutes. My phone lit up with her photo. I let it ring 3 times before answering. Hey, sweetheart. Dad, what the hell is going on? Her voice was sharp, stressed. Background noise suggested she was outside, maybe on the lodge's deck or patio. We just got a call from the condo association, something about a mandatory inspection tomorrow morning. Inspection? Don't play dumb. Did you do this? I kept my voice neutral, slightly confused. Do what? I don't understand. The inspection. They're saying it's about permit violations, that someone filed a complaint. That's concerning. You should probably deal with that. We're 2 hours away. We're at the retreat. We paid for this. I'm sure they'll reschedule. They won't reschedule. It's mandatory. We have to be there or they'll assume non-compliance and issue a violation. Helen was watching me from across the table, eyes bright with interest. I put the phone on speaker. Then I guess you should head back, I said. Are you serious right now? This is our weekend. We planned this for months. You'll have other weekends. There was a moment of silence. I could hear her breathing, could almost feel her trying to decide how to play this. This is because of yesterday, isn't it? I don't know what you mean. The smoking thing. You're mad about the smoking. I'm not mad about anything, Brenna. You are! You're doing this to punish us. Marcus's voice cut in, loud enough to hear through the phone. Is that him? Let me talk to him. Marcus wants to talk to you, Brenna said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. I don't have anything to say to Marcus. Dad, have a good trip. Deal with the inspection. We'll talk when you get back. I hung up. Helen laughed. Actually, laughed out loud. Oh, that was beautiful. Was it too much? It was perfect, completely deniable, utterly infuriating. The phone rang again. I declined the call. It rang again. Declined. Text messages started coming through. You can't do this. This is insane. Call us back. We know it was you. I set the phone face down on the table. They'll keep trying, Helen said. Let them. What about the retreat payment? Should bounce sometime this afternoon. The credit line will flag any large transactions pending property compliance review. They're going to be furious. Good. Helen stood up, started clearing the dishes. You know what's funny? What? They could have avoided all of this with basic human decency. If Brenna had just gone outside to smoke, if Marcus had kept his mouth shut, if they'd shown you even a shred of respect. But they didn't. No, they didn't. Because they thought you were weak. They thought being polite made you a pushover. She turned to face me, leaning against the kitchen counter. People confuse patience with weakness all the time. They see someone who doesn't fight back, who doesn't make a scene, and they assume they've won. They don't realize they're just showing their hand while you're keeping yours hidden. That's depressingly cynical. That's reality. You taught them everything they needed to know about respect. They chose not to learn. Now they get the lesson they actually deserve. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Marcus calling from his own number. I let it go to voicemail. 30 seconds later, the voicemail notification appeared. I played it on speaker. Marcus's voice came through, trying for reasonable and landing somewhere around barely controlled rage. Frank, hey, it's Marcus. Listen, I think there's been a misunderstanding. We really need to talk about this inspection thing. It's causing major problems for us. Can you call me back? Like soon? This is pretty urgent. Helen snorted. Major problems. He has no idea. Not yet. When does he find out about the car? Technically, the transfer violation notice goes out Monday afternoon, after the inspection confirms code violations. So they lose their weekend and their car in the same day. That's the timeline. She shook her head, grinning. You've really thought this through. I had all night. The rain picked up outside, hammering harder against the windows. The house felt safe, insulated. Inside these walls, Helen and I had built a life. We'd raised a daughter here. We'd worked and saved and compromised and fought and made up and done all the things that couples do over decades of marriage. And now that daughter was learning what happens when you discard the people who built your foundation. Around 2 p.m., my phone rang again. Different number. I didn't recognize it. Hello? Mr. Martinez? This is Jessica from Pinecrest Lodge. I'm calling about a payment issue with your daughter's reservation. I'm sorry. There must be some mistake. I'm not responsible for her reservation. Our records show the business credit account used for payment lists you as guarantor. I see. What's the issue? The final payment was declined. The account appears to be frozen pending some kind of review. Do you have another payment method? I don't. This isn't my reservation. But you're listed as... I understand what I'm listed as, but this is your issue to resolve with my daughter, not with me. I'm not paying for her vacation. Silence on the other end. Then carefully. If we don't receive payment by 6 p.m. today, we'll have to cancel the reservation and forfeit the deposit. That's unfortunate. Sir, is there anything else? No, I suppose not. I hung up. Helen raised her eyebrows. Cold. Effective. They're going to lose the deposit? Unless they can come up with $2,000 in the next 4 hours. Can they? I thought about Marcus's Instagram lifestyle, about the sponsored posts and brand deals and the carefully curated image of success. I thought about their rent, their car payment, their gym memberships and subscription services, and all the little luxuries they'd built their identity around. No, I said. They're leveraged to the limit. That's why they needed the credit line in the first place. Helen smiled. This is better than cable. The rest of Sunday passed quietly. The rain continued. We watched a movie, ate leftover pasta for dinner, existed in the comfortable routine of long marriage. My phone buzzed occasionally with increasingly desperate messages from Brenna and Marcus, but I ignored them all. Around 8 p.m., Helen went to bed early. I stayed up, sitting in my chair by the window, watching the rain blur the streetlights into smears of gold and white. The neighborhood was quiet. A few cars passed. Someone walked a dog under an umbrella. I thought about what Helen had said, about patience and weakness, about people confusing the two. I'd been patient with Brenna her entire life, patient through the teenage years, through the bad decisions and worse boyfriends, through the financial mistakes and the job changes and all the chaos of becoming an adult. Patient because that's what parents do. You give your kids room to fail, room to learn, room to become who they're going to be. But there's a difference between patience and surrender, between allowing mistakes and accepting abuse. They'd crossed a line yesterday, not just with the smoking, but with the attitude behind it, that casual dismissal. They were wrong. At 9:30, my phone lit up with one more call. Brenna. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. What? Dad. Her voice was different now, smaller. They canceled our reservation. We're being asked to leave. I heard. You heard? What do you mean you heard? The lodge called me this afternoon, looking for payment. I declined. Silence. Then, you declined. That's right. Why would you do that? Because it's not my responsibility. You're listed as guarantor for a credit line that's frozen due to property compliance issues. Issues that, coincidentally, wouldn't exist if you'd bothered to follow the law when you did your renovations. Another silence. Longer this time. I could hear her breathing, could picture her standing somewhere in that luxury lodge, phone pressed to her ear, starting to understand that this wasn't going away. This is insane, she said finally. You're ruining our weekend over a cigarette. I'm not ruining anything. You ruined it yourself when you decided my health concerns were a joke. I didn't. You laughed, Brenna. Marcus told me I don't get to tell you anything. And you laughed. We were just what? Just being cruel? Just being disrespectful? Just demonstrating exactly how little you value the man who paid for your wedding, co-signed your mortgage, and set up the credit line you're now crying about. She didn't have an answer for that. Go home, I said. Deal with your inspection tomorrow. Figure out your permit violations. And maybe, while you're at it, think about how you treat people who've only ever tried to help you. I hung up before she could respond. The house was quiet. Rain drummed on the roof. And somewhere, 2 hours north, my daughter was learning that actions have consequences. I went to bed feeling better than I had in years. Monday morning. The lawyer's card sat on my desk. Patricia Lawson, family mediator, professional problem solver. I picked up the phone, dialed. She answered on the second ring. Mr. Martinez, have you reached a decision? I have questions first. Of course. If I agree to this, what guarantees do I have that they'll actually sell the property, that I'll get paid back? The agreement would be legally binding. Failure to comply results in automatic foreclosure and a lien on any future assets. They don't have future assets. Then they'll have motivation to comply. Second question. What happens to the criminal charges, the breaking and entering? That's separate. But my understanding is that if they cooperate fully, demonstrate rehabilitation, the prosecutor might be willing to reduce charges. Might. Law isn't certainty, Mr. Martinez. It's calculated risk. I drummed my fingers on the desk. I want one more thing. which is an apology, real, documented, not coerced, before any money changes hands. Silence on the line. Then, that's unusual. It's non-negotiable. I'll have to ask them. You do that. I hung up. Helen was in the doorway. Demanding an apology? Yes. What if they refuse? Then we know where we stand. She came closer, sat on the edge of the desk. You're playing chicken with their entire future. I'm setting a boundary. There's a difference. Is there? Because from here, it looks like you're making emotional demands in a legal situation. Maybe. But if they can't apologize, if they can't acknowledge basic wrongdoing, then any agreement we make is worthless. They'll just see it as manipulation, as forcing me to give in. The apology proves they understand. Helen studied my face. You've thought this through. I've thought about nothing else. My phone buzzed. Text from Patricia Lawson. They're willing to apologize. When and where? I showed Helen. She raised an eyebrow. That was fast. Too fast. They're just saying what they think I want to hear. So what do you do? I typed a response. Here, our house, tonight, face to face. No lawyers, no intermediaries, just them, us, and honesty. The response came quickly. Agreed. 7 p.m. Helen stood. I'll make dinner. We're not feeding them. Not for them, for us, because we need to eat and we need to be calm when they arrive. She was right. As always. The day dragged. I tried to work in the garage, organizing tools, but my mind wouldn't settle. Every hour felt like 3. By 6 p.m., I'd reorganized the same shelf 4 times. Helen found me staring at a box of screws. Come inside. Shower. Change clothes. Be ready. I obeyed. Showered, dressed in clean clothes. Not fancy, but presentable. Helen had made pasta. Simple, filling. We ate mechanically. What if they're not sorry? She asked. Then nothing changes. And if they are? Then maybe something does. At 6:50, headlights appeared in the driveway. Not the SUV, something smaller, older, borrowed or rented. They appeared at the door exactly at 7. I opened it. Brenna looked different. No makeup. Hair pulled back, wearing jeans and a plain sweatshirt. Marcus stood beside her, hands in pockets, shoulders hunched. Come in, I said. Tuesday morning brought paperwork. Patricia Lawson arrived at 9 with a briefcase full of documents. Helen and I sat at the kitchen table while she spread everything out. This is the escrow agreement, she explained. Money gets deposited here. Contractors submit invoices. I approve payments. Everything tracked and documented. How much are we talking? I asked. Initial estimate? $35,000 for structural repairs, another 10 for permits, inspections, certification. Call it 50 total. I felt my stomach drop. 50,000? Welcome to fixing illegal renovations. Your daughter and her husband cut corners. Now they're paying premium to undo the damage. Helen leaned back in her chair. They can't afford that. That's why we're selling the property. Market value should be around $220. After paying off the remaining mortgage and reimbursing you for the repairs, they'll walk away with maybe $40,000. And their credit? Destroyed. But rebuilding credit is easier than rebuilding a condemned condo. I signed where she indicated. Helen witnessed. We were officially committed. How long until work starts? I asked. Contractors are lined up. Should begin tomorrow. 4 to 6 weeks for completion, assuming no complications. There are always complications. True, but that's what contingency funds are for. She packed up her briefcase. One more thing. Your daughter and Marcus need somewhere to stay during repairs. They have options. Do they? Because last I heard, they were sleeping in a borrowed car. I felt Helen's eyes on me, felt the weight of expectation, the unspoken question. They can stay in the guest room, I said, temporarily, until they find something better. Patricia smiled. That's generous. That's conditional. Any disrespect, any drama, They're out. Non-negotiable. I'll make that clear. After she left, Helen looked at me. The guest room? You disagree? No, I just want to make sure you're doing this for the right reasons. What are the right reasons? Not guilt, not obligation, but genuine willingness. I thought about that. I think I'm doing it because it's practical. They need a place. We have space, it's temporary, and it lets us keep eyes on the situation. You're going to monitor them? I'm going to set expectations and enforce boundaries. There's a difference. She kissed my cheek. You're learning. Brenna and Marcus moved in that afternoon. 1 carload of belongings. Not much to show for years of adult life. They carried bags upstairs in silence, unpacked in the guest room while Helen and I stayed downstairs. When they came back down, Brenna looked nervous. Thank you for letting us stay. House rules, I said. You clean up after yourselves. You contribute to groceries. You're respectful. Break any of those and you're out. Clear? Clear. Good. Marcus, you're helping me in the garage tomorrow. We have work to do. He blinked. What kind of work? The kind that teaches you how to use your hands for something besides social media. Helen hid a smile. Brenna looked between us, uncertain how to respond. Dinner's at 6, Helen announced. We eat together, as a family. That means phones down, conversation up. They nodded, retreated upstairs. Helen looked at me. Putting Marcus to work? He needs structure, discipline, something to do besides obsess over lost followers. You're going to break him. I'm going to build him. There's a difference. The next morning, I woke Marcus at 6. Garage, now. He stumbled downstairs in sweatpants and a wrinkled t-shirt. I handed him coffee. Today we're organizing. Every tool, every box, everything gets labeled and stored properly. This is punishment. This is learning. You want to understand why your renovation failed? Start by understanding how things should be done. We worked in silence. I showed him how to organize by function, how to maintain equipment, how to respect tools. He grumbled, but obeyed. Around 10, I had him watch while I repaired a neighbor's fence. See that? Structural integrity, load-bearing. These aren't just words, they're principles. I get it. Do you? Because you tore out a load-bearing wall without understanding what load-bearing meant. You thought it was just drywall. But walls have purpose. Structure has meaning. You ignore that, and buildings fall down. He was quiet for a moment. I didn't think about it like that. That's the problem. You didn't think, you just acted, and now you're paying for it. We worked until lunch. Helen brought sandwiches to the garage. Marcus ate mechanically, hands sore from unfamiliar labor. How you feeling? I asked. Tired. Good, tired means you worked. Tomorrow we do it again. His expression darkened, but he didn't argue. Inside, Brenna was helping Helen with housework. I could hear them talking, Helen's voice patient but firm. You fold corners like this, tight, neat. Everything has a place. I know how to fold laundry, Mom. Do you? Because those towels you put away yesterday were a mess. I had to refold them all. Silence. Then Brenna's voice, smaller. I'm not good at this stuff. Then learn. You're 28. Basic household management isn't optional. They continued working. I listened from the garage, hearing Helen do what I was doing with Marcus. Teaching. Not through lecture, but through action, through repetition, through standards that couldn't be negotiated. The week developed a rhythm. Wake early, work hard, eat together, sleep exhausted. No drama, no arguments, just structure. Friday morning, the contractor called. We've got a problem. What kind of problem? The damage is worse than expected. The wall removal created stress fractures in the ceiling joists. We need to replace the entire support structure. How much? Another 15,000, maybe 20. I closed my eyes. Do it. But document everything. Photos, receipts, engineering reports, everything. You got it. I called Patricia Lawson, explained the situation. That puts us over budget, she said. I know. We might need to adjust the sale price expectations, or find additional funds. Let me think about it. I hung up. Helen was watching. More money? Always more money. It's like the house is punishing them. Maybe it is. Maybe when you violate structure, structure fights back. That night at dinner, I told them about the increased costs. Brenna's face fell. We'll barely break even, she said. Breaking even is better than owing me $50,000 indefinitely. But we were hoping to have something left over, to rebuild. Marcus spoke up. We had plans. Move somewhere cheaper. Start over. Plans are good, but plans require resources. You spent your resources pretending to be wealthy. Now you're learning what actual wealth looks like. Less flash, more substance. You're enjoying this, he said. Not angry, just observational. I'm not enjoying watching you struggle, but I'm satisfied that you're learning. There's a difference. Brenna pushed food around her plate. Do you hate us? No. It feels like you do. I set down my fork. I don't hate you. I'm disappointed. There's a difference. Hate means I want you to fail. Disappointment means I know you can do better, and I'm frustrated that you're not. So what? We're just supposed to accept being broke and homeless? You're not homeless. You're living here. And broke is temporary. You're young. You're healthy. You can rebuild. But you have to want to. You have to commit to doing things differently. Helen added, Your father and I started with nothing. We built this house, this life. Everything you see, we created through work and sacrifice and smart choices. You can do the same. But you have to stop expecting shortcuts. Silence fell. They finished eating, helped clear dishes. The evening wound down. Later, lying in bed, Helen said, They're changing. Are they? Marcus worked 8 hours today without complaining once. Brenna actually thanked me for showing her how to cook properly. These are small things, but they're real. Or they're acting grateful, because they need a place to stay. Maybe. But I'm choosing to believe they're learning. When did you become the optimist? When you became the realist. Someone has to balance us out. Saturday brought new challenges. The contractor needed access to the condo for measurements. Brenna and Marcus had to go too, signing off on various decisions. I drove them, parked outside the building. The red tag was still visible on the door. Last time we were here, we broke a window, Marcus said quietly. I remember. That was stupid. Yes, it was. I was angry. I thought you were ruining our lives. But standing here now, looking at this mess we created, I get it. This is on us. I glanced at him. That's progress. Doesn't make it easier. Progress never is. Inside, the contractors were already working. Exposed beams, torn-out ceiling, the guts of the building visible. The lead contractor, a weathered man named Rodriguez, walked us through. See here? This joist was supporting the whole load. When you remove the wall, all that weight shifted to this single point. Over time, it cracked. Another few months and this ceiling might have collapsed. Maybe, or maybe just seriously injured when it came down. Either way, you got lucky someone called it in. She looked at me, understanding dawning. You didn't just ruin our weekend. You might have saved our lives. I didn't respond. Just watched as Rodriguez continued his explanation. We'll be done in 5 weeks, give or take. But this place won't ever be what it was. The repairs will be visible. The history will be documented. Any future buyer will know there were major structural issues. Will that affect the sale? Marcus asked. Probably. Might knock 10, 15,000 off the asking price. People don't like buying problems. Another hit, another reduction in what they'd walk away with. I watched Marcus process it. Watched the calculation happen behind his eyes. We should have done it right the first time, he said finally. Yes, I agreed. You should have. We left the contractors to their work, drove home in silence. But it was different from the angry silences of early days. This was contemplative. accepting. Back at the house, Marcus went straight to the garage, started organizing tools without being asked. Brenna helped Helen with dinner. The rhythm continued. Sunday morning, I found Marcus in the garage already working. 6 a.m. and he was cleaning equipment. Couldn't sleep? I asked. Didn't want to. Felt like I should be doing something useful. That's good. Useful is good. He set down a wrench. Can I ask you something? Sure. Did you plan all this? The inspection, the timeline, the consequences? Was it all calculated? I considered lying. Considered maintaining the facade, but something in his question deserved honesty. Yes and no. I called the inspection because you two disrespected me. That was calculated. But everything after? That was just consequences playing out. I didn't plan for your credit line to freeze. I didn't plan for the structural damage to be this bad. I just created the initial push and let reality do the rest. Like dominoes. Exactly like dominoes. He nodded slowly. I would have done it differently. How? I would have fought back, made your life hell, escalated until you backed down. That's what you tried to do. Yeah. And it didn't work. Because you didn't back down. You just kept enforcing boundaries until we had no choice but to accept them. That's parenting. Sometimes you set limits. Sometimes you enforce consequences. It's not about winning or losing. It's about teaching. Did we learn? I looked at him. Really looked at him. This young man who'd been so angry, so defensive, so certain he was right. Now standing in my garage at 6 a.m., asking if he'd learned something. You're here, I said. You're working. You're asking questions. That's learning. But am I better? Better is a process, not a destination. Every day you choose to do things differently is a day you're moving in the right direction. He picked up the wrench again. Thanks for not giving up on us. I'm your family. Family doesn't give up, even when we want to. We worked together until Helen called us for breakfast. The house smelled like coffee and bacon. Brenna had set the table. Small things. Normal things. Things that felt almost like the family we used to be. But different. Better, maybe. Built on truth instead of obligation.